In our headlines on this Friday, October 24th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump are scheduled to sit down for a bilateral summit next Wednesday on the sidelines of the multilateral APEC agenda. And the White House says Mr. Trump will meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping here in South Korea next Thursday in a much-anticipated summit amid rampant trade tensions. Meanwhile, addressing members of the media at the airport upon arrival from the U.S. earlier on this Friday, South Korean trade negotiators acknowledged the presence of sticking points in bilateral trade talks. We begin at the presidential office. President Lee Jae-myung will be heading to Malaysia for a number of ASEAN-related summits early next week before hosting here in South Korea bilateral and multilateral meetings under the APEC framework later in the week. Our correspondent Song Yoo-jin shares his agenda.
The upcoming week will be a super week of multilateral diplomacy for South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. That's according to his National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak on Friday. As expected, President Lee will first travel to Malaysia on Sunday to attend the ASEAN summit.
President Lee's first ASEAN summit will serve as an opportunity to elevate the annual $200 billion trade and over 12 million people-to-people exchange between Korea and ASEAN. His trip will also strengthen cooperation in sectors like AI and enhance joint responses to regional challenges such as online scam crimes.
On his first evening there, the president will have dinner with members of the Korean community. Monday will start with a bilateral summit with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. The two will discuss joint efforts to combat online scam crimes, an issue that has been making headlines in South Korea for weeks. President Lee will then attend the South Korea ASEAN and ASEAN Plus 3 summits, which include Japan and China, before holding talks with Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar bin Ibrahim ahead of his return flight in the afternoon. Waiting for him is the APEC Economic Leaders meeting in Gyeongju. It's another high-profile stage on which the president will host back-to-back summits and chair the 21-member forum on trade, artificial intelligence, and demographic challenges.
Through summits with the United States, China and Japan, we'll complete the fastest ever round of reciprocal visits with Washington, restore relations with Beijing through the first Chinese state visit in 11 years, and sustain positive momentum with Tokyo by meeting Japan's new Prime Minister early in her term.
The biggest spotlight will be on his second in-person meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday, as Seoul and Washington have yet to finalize a trade deal. Also in focus is Lee's first summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday after the two-day APEC leaders meeting ends. Working-level talks are underway to schedule a one-on-one with new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Two major multilateral stages in a single week: the ASEAN summit in Malaysia and the APEC Economic Leaders meeting in Gyeongju. It remains to be seen how President Lee will leverage this super week to deepen diplomatic ties and help shape global discussions on shared challenges. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
In the meantime, President Lee Jae-myung says his administration is examining the potential ripple effects, that is, of a possible U.S. trade deal on South Korea's financial markets. Remarks to dissent were made in an interview with Singaporean daily The Straits Times ahead of his one-on-one with U.S. President Donald Trump next week. The president also asserted that efforts are underway to explore ways to maximize mutual gain with regard to trade while exercising caution against any artificial deadline. And Seoul's trade negotiators are back home from the U.S., having ended their second face-to-face session in less than a week. Our Kim Bo-kyung has the latest.
The Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bum and Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwon have returned home from Washington after holding follow-up tariff negotiations with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Though there had been some progress in the talks, the two countries still remain sharply divided over key points, the presidential aide said on Friday to the reporters at Incheon Airport.
There are still a few remaining issues, and we're now at a very critical moment. We'll do our best until the very end.
When asked about the possibility of reaching a trade deal by the time President Lee meets President Trump next week, Kim said there is still a long way to go and that time is running out.
There's no time left for additional face-to-face negotiations, and APEC is just around the corner. Time is running out, and if we're hoping for a deal to be reached around APEC, there's still a long way to go.
Kim, however, added that negotiations sometimes advance rapidly at the final stage. The officials did not disclose specific areas where they were at odds with the U.S., but one of the key issues has been differences over how to implement Seoul's $350 billion investment pledge. There were some expectations of two allies reaching a trade deal as Washington took one step back from demanding a full cash investment or upfront equity contribution, which Seoul deemed unrealistic given the country's foreign exchange constraints. However, the U.S. is still reportedly pressing for a considerable portion of direct cash investment to which South Korea is seeking to reduce the cash portion as much as possible and extend the investment period to avoid shocks to Korea's foreign exchange market. There still are some views, though, that the upcoming Korea-U.S. summit next week could provide the momentum to reach a deal. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Well, after the summit between the leaders of Seoul and Washington next Wednesday here in South Korea, the U.S. president is slated to sit down with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping the following day, also here in the country, on the sidelines of the APEC agenda. Our Yoon-jin reports.
The White House confirmed on Thursday that U.S. President Donald Trump will be meeting Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea on October 30th. It is a part of Trump's wider Asia trip, which includes his first stop in Malaysia on Sunday for the ASEAN summit, followed by a meeting in Japan with the newly sworn-in prime minister on Tuesday. He'll then move on to South Korea on Wednesday for his meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Trump is also scheduled to deliver keynote remarks at the APEC CEO luncheon and participate in a working dinner with APEC leaders before flying back to the U.S. Thursday evening. But attention is being drawn to his confirmed meeting set for Thursday morning with Xi Jinping. It will be the first face-to-face meeting for both leaders since Trump's return to office. The meeting comes amid an escalation in trade tensions between the two countries. Trump said the first question he would ask Xi would be about fentanyl, as it is the chemical that's been a leading cause of U.S. overdose deaths, which Washington accuses Beijing of failing to curb its exports of. Beijing, in return, has accused Washington of using the chemical to blackmail China. Tensions have jumped recently with China announcing restrictions on its rare earth mineral exports, to which Trump has threatened to impose an extra 100% tariff on Chinese goods from November. Attention is drawn to whether the world's two largest economies can hammer out some kind of sustainable trade deal, as it could send shockwaves through various industries around the world. Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Koo says action will be taken to ensure stability in the foreign exchange market if necessary. Speaking at a related meeting with policy makers earlier on this Friday, Koo cited external risk factors, including U.S.-China trade tensions, as reasons for volatility within the foreign exchange market. Meanwhile, with regard to domestic demand, the Finance Ministry made note of the recent rebound in consumer spending, as well as stronger than expected exports and investor sentiment on the local bourse. In contrast, rising housing prices reportedly remain a cause for concern. North Korea and the U.S. should not miss the opportunity to meet during South Korea's hosting of this year's APEC forum next week. Now, this is according to Unification Minister Chung Dong-young. Speaking to members of the media earlier on this Friday, he pointed out that both the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. have shared their interest in a potential meeting, and that South Korea has witnessed activities across the inter-Korean border aimed at tidying up the area. He added that Seoul, for its part, stands in full support of such a summit and is prepared to provide with logistical assistance if necessary. In commemoration of the upcoming APEC event here in South Korea next week, artists from the host city Gyeongju and their counterparts from Taiwan's oldest city, Tainan, came together for an art exhibition to celebrate creativity and friendship. Our Park Gonu reports.
Just days before the APEC leaders' meeting kicks off in Gyeongju, a city known for its 1,000-year-old heritage, the spirit of cultural exchange is already in full swing. For the first time, artists from Gyeongju and Taiwan's ancient capital Tainan have come together for a joint art exhibition, following an exchange agreement signed last year. A total of 40 works created by 20 artists from each city are on display, celebrating friendship and a shared vision for a successful APEC event. A representative piece titled Bungjang Malli, an idiom meaning a long and glorious journey ahead, embodies that significance. While Gyeongju artists are presenting works across diverse genres, including pottery and paintings, all 20 pieces from Tainan feature calligraphy, as it's one of East Asia's most emblematic art forms.
Calligraphy is like a common language, as the two countries have been exchanging for a long time. And this exhibition carries special meaning, as much of Taiwan's culture and history started from Tainan.
Other Taiwanese artists also expressed their desire for more collaborative projects.
Through calligraphy, we've been able to learn from one another and grow together. I hope programs like this will continue and that Korean artists will also have the opportunity to visit Taiwan for future exchanges.
Those thoughts were also shared by the Korean artists.
Artists need to actively communicate and share their artistic spirit and vision. We need more opportunities for artists to meet in person and engage in deeper dialogue. We're gradually working on plans to broaden our exchanges with more places in the future.
Following Thursday's opening ceremony, the exhibition will run through November 1st for visitors from around the world. And as these artists dream of deeper ties, Gyeongju's journey of cultural exchange is just beginning, setting the stage for meaningful interactions during the upcoming APEC event. Totally a Bungjang Malli. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
And speaking of exhibitions, a dedicated team of skilled artisans is showcasing its determination to maintain Korean craftsmanship dating back centuries. Our Park Hyo-bin has this story.
Preserving tradition is just as important as creating it anew. A group of Korea's master artisans known as National Heritage Craftsmen have come together to showcase how traditional craftsmanship continues to thrive. Inside Deoksugung Palace, Korea's heritage is reborn through the hands of those devoted to keeping it alive. From a reinterpretation of the Irorobongdo, the iconic royal folding screen that stood behind the king's throne, to a faithful restoration of Gyeongbokgung Palace's floral walls, the exhibition features more than 120 works by artisans and apprentices across disciplines such as carpentry, painting, and sculpture. These craftspeople spent months, sometimes an entire year, replicating the exact materials or techniques of the past.
This portrait was made using yungnimun, a technique from the late Joseon period. We use natural pigments based on original recipes. Recreating the traditional process requires multiple attempts and can take 6 months to a year.
Their dedication goes beyond restoring old methods. It's about reviving the spirit behind them.
As a builder of hanok, Korea's traditional wooden houses, I am proud to promote the excellence of Korean architecture worldwide. We're doing our best to raise the global profile of our country's heritage craftsmen.
Each brushstroke and carving embodies centuries of accumulated skill and pride. And through their hands, the legacy of Korea's ancestors finds new life.
Our forebears left us this national heritage. Now it's our turn to pass it on to the next generation. That's why we keep creating, so that tradition never fades.
The exhibition, which runs until this Sunday, reminds visitors that heritage is not merely a relic of the past, but a living dialogue between yesterday and today, carried forward by those who refuse to let it disappear. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
The upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in the ancient Korean city of Gyeongju matters more than ever. Now, this is according to a South Korean politician who formerly served as the head of the UN between 2007 and 2016. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young sat down with him.
Putting politics aside, the United States, China and Russia must seek solutions together for the future of humanity when world leaders gather at the meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation in Korea next week. That's according to Ban Ki-moon, former United Nations Secretary-General, in an interview with Arirang TV.
This should not be just one of the many summit meetings. This should be regarded by the leaders as the most serious APEC meeting. APEC is Asia Pacific, but we should not confine it to the limit of Asia Pacific. We have to look beyond the boundaries of Asia Pacific. Otherwise, we will never be able to declare that we are living in a sustainable world. Now that the United States President and Chinese President and Russia is also member state, I sincerely hope that they sit down together with a humble mind for the future of our planet Earth and also humanity as a whole.
Amid geopolitical confrontations and trade tensions, Pan warned that the world is more divided than before, hampering the progress on tackling climate change and achieving sustainable development, both key themes of this year's APEC. Pan called on the US to return to the Paris Climate Agreement, which was reached under his leadership, bringing together 196 countries in collective carbon reduction and pledges to help developing countries attain the means for green growth.
The United States is the most powerful, most resourceful country, leader country of the world. No doubt about that. US cannot do it alone. We must join all our hands on the deck together, be they political or business leaders, civil society, men and women, young people. We have moral duty to transfer this only planet Earth to our succeeding generations, to the generation next decade, next centuries.
Reflecting on his own experience as South Korea's foreign minister when the country first hosted APEC in 2005, he said that the same cooperative spirit must return to Gyeongju 2 decades later to revive multilateralism. In doing so, Pan urged current leaders to think beyond election cycles and short-term political gains for the sake of the planet they pass down to successive generations.
I'm urging particularly political leaders who are much more interested in having their political power in their hands, but those people who are in power, they bear historical as well as political responsibility. I'm sure that history will judge their leadership later.
Ban Ki-moon, who served as the 8th United Nations Secretary-General, now heads the Ban Ki-moon Foundation for a Better Future and chairs the Global Green Growth Institute, continuing his work to advance sustainable development and climate action across the world. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Brussels on Thursday, European leaders failed to reach an agreement on using frozen Russian assets to help fund Ukraine's war effort, despite a direct appeal from President Vladimir Zelensky for urgent action. Zelensky called on the European Union to release 140 billion euros held in a Belgian clearinghouse, saying, quote, Russia brought war to our land and they have to pay for this war. But opposition from Belgium, which hosts most of the frozen funds, blocked consensus. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever warned that his country needs guarantees that other members will share any legal or financial risks if Moscow challenges the move. EU leaders instead asked the European Commission to explore alternative financing options, postponing a final decision until December's summit. The impasse came as the EU approved its 19th round of sanctions targeting Russian liquefied natural gas and several Chinese energy buyers, while the US imposed new measures on Russia's 2 largest oil companies. U.S. President Donald Trump granted a presidential pardon on Thursday to Changpeng Zhao, the founder of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, Binance. Zhao had already served a 4-month sentence after pleading guilty in 2024 to money laundering violations, but this pardon is likely to remove restrictions on him running financial firms. The White House called Zhao's prosecution part of the prior administration's, quote, war on cryptocurrency, saying Trump acted to correct Biden-era overreach. But critics, including Senator Elizabeth Warren, labeled the move, quote, a kind of corruption, citing Trump's personal crypto investments and family business links to Binance-backed ventures. The decision follows Trump's broader push to ease crypto rules. In New York on Thursday, the NBA was rocked by a sweeping federal gambling investigation that led to the arrests of Portland Trail Blazers coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat player Terry Rozier, and more than 30 others accused of rigging games and poker matches tied to mafia families. Prosecutors say Billups joined a poker-fixing conspiracy that used X-ray tables, hidden cameras, and special sunglasses to cheat gamblers out of at least $7 million. Rozier is charged with sharing private player information and leaving games early to help rig bets. FBI Director Kash Patel said the operation revealed tens of millions of dollars in fraud, theft, and robbery. Both men face money laundering and wire fraud conspiracy charges and have been placed on leave as the NBA pledges full cooperation. The league said, quote, the integrity of our game remains our top priority. In Nigeria, discarded plastic bottles, wrappers, and metal tops took on a new life this week. A bold trashing show in Lagos turned that waste into fashion and art. The event, staged by the Green Fingers Wildlife Initiative, featured students and teenage designers who built colorful outfits entirely from recycled beach litter. Founder Chinedu Mogbo said this year's theme, Sea Turtle Awakening, highlights how plastic pollution threatens marine life across West Africa. Nigeria produces about 2.5 million tons of plastic waste each year, much of it ending up in rivers and the Atlantic Ocean. Models said the fashion show proves that, quote, beauty can also be sustainable. Organizers hope the spectacle will inspire young people to fight plastic pollution, one recycled design at a time. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
As the easterly winds blow, there's prolonged rain in areas on the east coast. Even now, there are rain clouds located along the east coast. With a heavy rain advisories issued in Yeongdeok in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, rain will continue until tomorrow. In the meantime, the daytime temperatures will stay above the average levels. Seoul reached 20 degrees Celsius during the day today, which is about 2 degrees higher than usual. There will be clear autumn weather until tomorrow. However, cold air will flow in from the north from Sunday, and the day will become cold again. Tomorrow morning will start off at above 10 degrees all over the country. Daily highs will move up to 18 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 20 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju. The morning temperature in Seoul will plunge to 3 degrees Celsius on Monday and 2 degrees on Tuesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us, and thank you for now.